start the meeting. My name is Councillor John Kent and I chair Cabinet. Can I start by reminding everybody present that this meeting is being live streamed and will be recorded for publication onto the Council's website. Item 1 is apologies for absence. Rhiannon, what apologies do we have?
Yes, we've had apologies from Councillor Morris-Cook and Councillor Worrell.
And can I add Councillor Watson, please? So item 2, minutes. I move that the minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on the 13th of November 2024 be approved as a correct record. Are there any comments on the accuracy of the minutes? No. Can we therefore agree that the minutes are approved as an accurate record?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 3, I have not agreed to any urgent items of business. Item 4, does any member have a declaration of interest they wish to make? No. Does any officer have a declaration of interest they wish to make? No. Thank you. We move to item 5, statements of the leader. I just want to say very, very briefly that I think it's pretty well expected now that we'll have the devolution white paper on Monday. Clearly, it will have significant impacts on Thurrock and Essex and a lot of local government besides. We will take some time to analyse what's in the white paper, to take stock, but I think our watchwords will be that we will move forward with the best intentions of the people of Thurrock at heart, however it is that we respond to the white paper. So item 6 is briefings on policy, budget and other issues. Do we have any this evening, Rhiannon? No?
I'm aware of.
Thank you. And item 7, no petitions have been submitted by members of the public. And item 8, I'm not aware of any questions submitted by non-executive members, but I would like to welcome Councillor Jeffreys as leader of the opposition group and Councillor Maney as chair of the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And, you know, appropriate times, Councillor Maney, when we're discussing, for instance, the Joint Scrutiny Committee, we will be grateful for your input. Item 9, matters referred to Cabinet for consideration by an Overview and Scrutiny Committee. A briefing note has been provided by the Place Overview and Committee relating to item 14, which is the All Essex Joint Air Quality Strategy. So we will consider that when we get there. Just as we get to this point, is it possible that we could invite Councillor Massey to a future meeting to give an update on the work of the Thames Crossing Action Group? Because we haven't had one yet this municipal year. Is everybody in agreement that we do that? Thank you. So item 10, decisions taken since the last meeting. A table of delegated decisions taken since our last meeting has been provided in the document pack and is published online. Does anybody have any comments or questions on those? No. So we'll move to item 11, which is Thurrock Council's Improvement and Recovery report. This would be Councillor Worrell's report, but with the indulgence of Cabinet, I will introduce. So this is the first Improvement and Recovery report which puts outcomes front and centre to demonstrate to Government and to Commission what our work is having. It gives an honest assessment of where we are against the outcomes of the Improvement and Recovery Plan and their success criteria. The success criteria sit underneath each of the outcomes have come directly from two sources. The first was the engagement of members and officers of this council in developing how we would measure our improvement. And the second is the statutory guidance on the best value duty, which was published by government after the ILP was agreed by full council. So as such, the primary audience for this report is the commissioners and government, and it's here in order to demonstrate that we are making good progress in responding to the directions. I think, however, there is a secondary audience, and that is members and officers of this council. And I think that one of the effects of the type of intervention we have with Dave Smith acting as both commissioner and as chief executive is that sometimes there's a temptation to forget that we are actually in intervention because things still feel very normal. I think it's really important that all of us, officers and members, remember just what a bad place this council was in two years ago, just how far we've come, but we are still a council in intervention. And sometimes I think we lose sight of that. I think there are strong improvements which we can evidence through the report, such as the new approach to overview and scrutiny, just as one. The real work that's being done on improving risk management across the council. Things like getting a proper grip of the council finances. Lots of other positives we can point to, but we shouldn't shy away from the challenges that we still face and that we have to continue to work on. You know, the culture of the organisation is still not good enough. That's a culture amongst both members and officers. We still have members whose behaviour at times does not reach the standard that we should all demand. And it's tempting to think that that's limited to just one or two. I'm afraid it isn't. It goes deeper than that, and this council will not recover in the way it should until those behaviours are rooted out and changed. So this report sets the baseline for how we'll compare ourselves going forward. It shows where we've made good progress, but it also highlights that if we slip back in any way, it's part of a culture which means that we mustn't hide or criticise where things are going off track, but shows that we're honest, self-aware, so that we can put things right. There remains an awful long way to go with lots to do, but this report demonstrates the concrete foundations the council has put in place to make a real difference for how we operate for our residents. I look forward to sharing this with commissioners at the Improvement and Recovery Board meeting next week, and all members will have the opportunity to share their views on our improvement journey at full council in January. Later in the meeting, we will look at the Q2 performance report, which is focused on how we're performing against the ambitions set out within our corporate plan, and I look forward to the views of members of Cabinet. So I will invite questions or comments. Councillor Muldowney.
Thank you, Chair. So I really welcome this report and the progress it highlights in our recovery journey. It's clear that significant strides have been made in strengthening governance, improving collaboration and laying the foundations for better decision making. And I want to thank all officers and members who've contributed to these efforts so far. I think, we're still at the beginning of our improvement journey, and it's a marathon, not a sprint. And achieving sustained improvement is going to require our ongoing commitment, some robust scrutiny and inclusivity at every step. So I'm looking forward to the further rolling out of this one. An area I'm really keen to see emerging in more detail is how the council is going to transform. I can see the intent through the high-level goals in the corporate plan around rebuilding trust and improving governance and creating sustainable services. And I'm excited to see some specificity around that as we move forward. I think sort of in the areas that are under me, I think audit is progressing well, but we've obviously got a long way to go. Risk management also is progressing, although one of the indicators is obviously showing as red. But from the base that we came from, if we remember, the BVI revealed a glaring absence of effective risk management practices within the council. And despite dealing with large investments and big financial decisions, they didn't properly assess or plan for potential risks. So that led to poor decision making and left the council exposed to serious problems. I think we've made good strides in addressing the lack of risk management, particularly in this year, and look forward to continue with that change and embedding that change more firmly within the organisation. Thank you.
Councillor Muldowney, thank you. Any further questions or comments? No? Okay, in which case I'll move to the recommendations. 1.1, that we note the progress made on the Council's improvement and recovery within the context of the outcomes framework. Is that agreed? And 1.2, to refer this report to full Council for consideration of all members. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. We move on to item 12, Planning Enforcement Plan. This is the report of Councillor Watson, so I will introduce briefly in her absence. As the local planning authority, the council has a fundamental responsibility to uphold planning standards and to ensure the character and integrity of our communities are preserved. This responsibility is underpinned by our commitment to investigate suspected breaches of planning control as reported by residents or other stakeholders. So tonight we're presenting the Planning Local Enforcement Plan 2024 for Cabinet approval. This plan outlines how we as a council will carry out our enforcement duties, prioritise our actions and implement appropriate measures to address breaches of planning control. Adopting this plan is a critical step forward. It ensures that our approach aligns with our new corporate plan and operating model, which emphasises a preventative, supportive and community-first approach. This model reflects our ethos as a council that seeks to act as the last point of intervention, working to support and guide wherever possible before resorting to enforcement. The Planning Local Enforcement Plan will serve as a baseline of best practice, offering clarity to residents, to stakeholders and officers about what they can expect from us. It reaffirms our commitment to transparency, to fairness and consistency in all enforcement matters. In practice, this means being proactive and responsive to community concerns while balancing the need for development with the preservation of our local amenity. The plan also enables us to address breaches effectively and to ensure that we are working in the best interests of all of those who live, work and invest in our borough. I ask Cabinet to approve this plan and to join together in ensuring that our planning enforcement processes remain robust, fair and focused on delivering good growth for our communities. With that, I will open for questions or comments. None? Okay, so I will move recommendation 2.1 to agree and adopt the Planning Local Enforcement Plan, which is attached to Appendix 1. Are we all agreed? Agreed. Thank you. And 2.2 to agree delegation to the Chief Planning Officer to make amendments to the plan as may be required from time to time in consultation with the portfolio holder for good growth. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Come on to item 13, which is the Gambling Policy Review, and I will invite Councillor Holloway to introduce her report.
Thank you, Leader. The Gambling Act 2005 requires the Council as a licensing authority to produce a statement of principles, its policy statement. The legislation further requires the Council to review, determine and publish its policy statement with respect to the exercise of its licensing functions every 3 years. So our policy is due to be renewed. The gambling policy sets out our approach to licensing, betting shops, bingo, adult gaming centres, gaming machines in pubs, small society lotteries and other gambling activity in the borough. The revised policy has been subject to the statutory consultation and has already been agreed by the licensing committee, and if agreed tonight will come into effect from the 31st of January 2025.
Councillor Holloway, thank you. I will invite questions or comments. Councillor Muldowney.
Yes, thank you. Just pleased to welcome this updated gambling licence policy for 2025-28, which demonstrates Thurrock Council's commitment to responsible regulation and community safeguarding. So I think it's a vital step in ensuring that gambling within our borough is conducted fairly and transparently while protecting vulnerable individuals and maintaining the highest standards of integrity. So I just want to say that I'm in agreement with the recommendations. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Councillor Hooper.
I too welcome this report, but from a public health point of view, it's something that I will be also bringing to the Health and Wellbeing Board. I've asked for a report on this subject so we can actually help people with gambling addiction problems and their finances behind that. But this is actually really, really helpful, so thank you.
Any further comments? No. Councillor Holloway, if you'd like to read your recommendations.
I move recommendation 2.1. If no significant relevant responses are received during the statutory consultation, then the policy be referred to full council for adoption.
Thank you. We move on to item 14, which is the adoption of the All Essex Joint Air Quality Strategy. And once again, I will invite Councillor Holloway to introduce her report.
Thank you. This item for decision comes to us following its scrutiny at the place ONS committee. The committee asked some very valuable questions and raised important concerns on the level of pollution in Thurrock, engaging with the community on air pollution, engagement on the policy itself across the council, and the impact of factories in Thurrock, just to name just a few, which the document has been shared with the Cabinet to review, and it's important to reflect on the issues raised by the committee. As part of the Environment Act 2021, local authorities are required to monitor and manage local air quality. Where an area exceeds the National Health-Based Air Quality Objectives, a council must declare an Air Quality Management Area, or an AQMA. Following this, the council must produce an Air Quality Action Plan, an AQAP, outlining the actions they will take to bring air quality within the AQMA back into compliance with its objectives. The AQAP must be remade every 5 years. Thurrock Council currently has 18 AQMAs, but Thurrock Council's AQAP is significantly out of date. Work is underway to produce a replacement, but in the meantime, Essex have produced an Essex-wide joint air quality strategy, which we have been asked to adopt. The joint AQS has been written by consultants working on behalf of Essex County Council, with the hope that it will be adopted by all authorities in Greater Essex, including Southend and Thurrock. Air pollution does not stop at our borders. 50% of the air pollution we monitor here in Thurrock is not emitted locally, which is significantly more than the contribution of road traffic. Working collaboratively with our neighbouring boroughs is an important way to tackle this major environmental health issue. Therefore, I ask Cabinet to agree to adopt the policy.
Thank you. Councillor Hooper.
I again welcome this. It's something we have discussed at the Health Board. Obviously, bad air affects our health in many different ways, not just with our breathing, but it contributes to strokes, it contributes to heart conditions. I've met with my counterparts in Essex and in Southend who are also adopting the policy. And I think, bearing in mind that, as you say, Councillor Holloway, 50% of our pollution doesn't come from Thurrock. I think working in partnerships with other local authorities should be welcomed. Can I just put something in place that I've shared with officers is my concern around the dust, which is, I know, not air quality, it's a slightly different subject, so I've been reliably informed. And the monitoring of dust, particularly in the Tilbury area, which also clearly affects people's well-being and health. This is something we're going to be looking at with the Director of Public Health to see if we can work in partnership with other authorities to see if we can actually start dealing with this problem. I think it's about how often maybe there are breaches in potential air pollution, for want of better words, or dust pollution, as I should say. But I welcome this report, and I welcome the fact that we're working in partnership with our friends in Essex.
Councillor Maldoni.
Thank you, Chair. As a ward councillor for Chadwell St Mary and a resident of Tilbury, where residents often bring up concerns about air quality, I fully support the adoption of this strategy, and thank you, Councillor Hooper, for the added information about how you're going to deal with the dust problem within Tilbury. I really appreciate that. Air pollution is a pressing issue that affects health and well-being of residents across Thurrock and beyond. This strategy represents a crucial step in addressing these challenges collaboratively and comprehensively. Sitting on the Lower Thames Crossing Task Force group has led to me knowing more about particulate matter 2.5 and 10 than probably any person wants to. But the health risks that are associated with these levels of pollution are, we need to be handling them, and so I absolutely welcome this strategy, and I'm proud that this strategy considers the borough as a whole, aiming for a future where every resident can enjoy healthier living conditions. I commend the Council for prioritising this issue and urge everyone to support the strategy's implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? I would just echo what's been said. We all know that air quality in Thurrock just isn't good enough. We know that it's a major driver of early death in the borough, and it's something that needs to be to be gripped. So I guess my challenge is we have sign up to the strategy. It's a good strategy. What practical difference is that going to make to air quality in Thurrock? Because that's what we all want to see. So some real difference, and as quickly as we can. Councillor Holloway, I'll invite you to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Leader, and appreciate the positive feedback on the report and the recognition both on this report and the previous report and the involvement of public health, because these aren't sedentary issues that just cover one portfolio, they cover a number of issues. So I'm very happy to propose the recommendations. 2.1, agree in principle to adopt the All Essex Joint AQS subject to the production of a suitable final version.
Agreed.
And 2.2, agree that the documents for public consultation can include Thurrock's logo and that the consultation will be promoted to Thurrock residents.
We move on. Item 15 is Corporate Plan Performance Management and Assurance Report for Q2 24-25. This is the report of Councillor Worrell that I will introduce on her behalf. I've got to start by saying that this is one of those subjects which can be incredibly dry and just that little bit dull, but it is an essential tool for making sure that we continue to improve as an authority and that we learn lessons when things are going well also. And I think that's important. We're an ambitious council, and part of that ambition is the drive to be better and more open and more accountable as a council. So last month we adopted a new policy framework which sets out how we intend to, first of all, demonstrate accountability to our residents, businesses and partners, how we're going to improve transparency of our activity, and really importantly, how we will strive to constantly challenge our performance. The report that we have here today is a vital component in delivering that new framework, and it's the first report which links our activity to the priorities within our new corporate plan. I thank officers who have worked really quickly to identify milestones and metrics which, when considered in their totality, will help us to determine whether the council is moving in the right direction. The remaining quarters of this financial year provide an opportunity to test and learn this process, and alongside Cabinet we will ask our Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee members to help us continue to improve the way we report our performance against the corporate plan. These milestones demonstrate or describe a tangible piece of work which, when complete, will make progress against the corporate plan priorities. Examples include the development of new IT approaches, new strategies and the establishment of new working relationships. It's unsurprising that the performance of many milestones is on track, given that they were only agreed a few weeks ago. However, the work programme is extensive, and I hope that everybody will agree that there is sufficient stretch here to challenge this council to be ambitious in our intentions. The metrics are a measure of data which help us to assess performance and inputs and outputs. A red, amber or green rating helps us to determine performance against a target and the position since the previous year. Comparator data also helps us to understand how we're performing against sector expectations. Officers are working to determine a target or a tolerance level for each of the metrics, and I expect to see progress on this in the next report at Q3. The data has sparked multiple conversations across the council, conversations about whether our resources are allocated in the right way, in the right place, if they're focused on the right things and the right outcomes. And I think that's a really positive thing. It's something that we need to do much more often. So as a first report, I'm pleased with the progress. We have made a commitment to our communities to rebuild trust, and this work is a step in that direction to provide openness about how we're spending the public pound and how we intend to keep our promises to deliver the ambitions of the corporate plan. Finally, I would like to thank the involvement of the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee and all scrutiny committees in setting the targets that we have here tonight. With that, I'll invite questions or comments. Councillor Muldowney.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to welcome this detailed report which provides valuable insights into the Council's progress and areas that need attention. If just a very minor thing on page 5, there are 2 indicators at the top which are still under my name as well as Councillor Worrell's. I think they should just be under Councillor Worrell's, just if that can be amended in future reports.
Okay.
But I agree with the chair that I think we are achieving quite well. There's obviously still work to be done, and we need to address areas where progress has been slower. With that, I'll close my comments.
Anybody else? Councillor Hartstein?
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I just wanted to say, as portfolio holder, for me, this is a really useful document, just to enable oversight as well as having the detail around on my portfolio, and obviously it enables me to challenge and obviously be challenged. I just want to say thank you to all the officers for the work that's been put into this, and obviously, you know, we work towards improving outcomes for Thurrock residents and continue along our road to recovery. So, thank you, officers.
Councillor Hooper?
I'd like to say the same. I'd like to thank officers for their work on this and putting this together. It does help me a great deal as a portfolio holder. It really gets me to focus on areas we need to do work, and there's still a lot of work to do. So I'm grateful for that. So I really value this report.
Anybody else? No? Okay, I'm going to move to the recommendations, and I'm going to take them in reverse order. We're asked to consider recommending any areas of concern within the remits of the Place, People Overview and Scrutiny Committees to the chairs of those respective committees. Are there any this evening? No? Okay. Then I ask that we note the quarterly performance update report and progress made up to the end of the second quarter of 24-25 in delivering the Year 1 priority milestones and metrics of the corporate plan. Are we agreed? Agreed. Thank you. So item 16, corporate overview and scrutiny, budget scrutiny discussion and recommendations summary. Councillor Maney, would you like to start with this one?
Thank you, Leader. Thank you for inviting me to speak this evening. As Cabinet will be aware, the Corporate O&S Committee on the 20th of November looked at the proposed budget savings. We were joined by the People and Place O&S committees. It was a full meeting, I think we all agree, and the vast majority of savings that were put forward, I think we agreed were not contentious, and we accepted them. But there were 6 recommendations that came out of the committee, and they're listed in the report. I'm happy to go through them individually if you'd like me to. These are recommendations for Cabinet to review or consider some of the savings that have been put forward. They're not necessarily, I think maybe with the exception of 1 or 2, they're not necessarily recommendations not to do something, just with seeking clarity and asking Cabinet to consider some of the things that have been put forward. So did you want me to go through the recommendations in turn?
Please, Ben, that
Okay.
would be helpful.
So 1.1, this relates to Grange Waters. As I think you'll probably remember, there was some concern amongst the committee that the council was committing quite a large sum of capital to that facility with the aim of making it commercially viable. We would welcome that. I think anyone who's lived in a borough for any period of time will remember that Grange Waters once was a great facility. It was at one point open to all members of the public. It was somewhere you could go just for any, even if you didn't want to use the facilities there. It was a recreation area, and it was sad when it closed. But I think the concern of the committee is the council ready to take on the undertaking to make that commercially viable again? Are we in a place where we think we can manage that? So the recommendation is firstly to ask Cabinet to reassure us and reassure themselves that we are ready to manage a facility like that. And also there was some questions around whether we have a business case. I don't think any of the committee, certainly not corporate O&S, had seen a business case at that point. So we asked whether there was a business case. I think the answer at the time was that there is some kind of business case. We've asked to see that. That hasn't been forthcoming yet, but I think it will come, from what I understand today, it will come back to corporate O&S at a later date. 1.2, there was a request for Cabinet to consider other revenue-generating activities. For my part, I think the council's already doing that. I think, personally, I'm satisfied that the council has, right from the get-go, really, certainly with things like fees and charges, is looking at how we can maximise income. Again, I suspect that a full report to all these recommendations will come forward, and we'll see that the council is maximising that. But there was some concern from members that we have some reassurance on that, the Cabinet is maximising all income generation possibilities. 1.3, this was probably one recommendation that got the committee most excited. It was in relation to the proposal to recruit an energy manager. There was a difference of opinion, I think, between the committee and some of the committee members who joined us from other ONS committees as to a difference of opinion with Cabinet as to whether this was an expenditure that was justifiable and whether or not we really needed to recruit to this position in order to find energy efficiencies. I appreciate that the role is quite varied. It's not just literally a case of looking for cheaper tariffs for your electric and things like that. But there was a point was made by Councillor Byrne, no less. And it's one, one of the very few things I would agree with him on. Oh no, but he and I often have swipes at each other via WhatsApp. He knows I wouldn't be kind to him in a public forum. But I think the question here is, he made a very valid point, is why can't our facilities operation find some of these proposed savings without the need to recruit a specific position? And that's something I've got sympathy with. So the request from the committee really is to justify and give reassurance that we specifically need to recruit an energy manager in order to realise some of the savings or some of the benefits from that post. Again, I suppose we're not. No answer is going to be given tonight, but we look forward to, in due course, receiving a justification for that proposal, if indeed it is one that Cabinet seeks to take forward. 1.4 was a recommendation to consider a 50% reduction in brown bin charges for pensioners. I know that when we were considering the introduction of a charge last year, this was something that the Cabinet at the time said that we would review at a later stage. The proposal to extend the brown bin collection service to 52 weeks of the year is essentially, as far as I can see, it's a proposal to incur some additional expenditure in order to maximise income from take-up of the brown bin scheme. Councillor Jeffreys proposed this one, and the committee, by a majority vote, was happy to ask Cabinet to look at a reduction for pensioners, again in the hope that by lowering the charge it will increase uptake of the brown bin scheme amongst pensioners. And then moving on to 1.4, there was, I think, a bit of confusion around what exactly that is. There's a proposal to save £100,000, I think the figure was, from reduction in highways operational maintenance. I asked at the committee whether that was specifically a cut to services or whether it was a saving to be realised through efficiencies. And I think Councillor Holloway answered at the time it was specifically a cut to services or highways maintenance. Again, I'm sure we'll receive clarity on that in due course, but the committee would ask Cabinet to review whether, if it is indeed a cut to services or a reduction in capability, that you look to see whether that saving can be found elsewhere. And I think that's it. 1.6 is a general recommendation to take into account all the other recommendations that were made at Cabinet, but which weren't specifically formal recommendations as such. I hope that's clear, Leader, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Maney, that's very helpful. Thank you. What I propose to do is to take each recommendation in turn by inviting the relevant portfolio holder to comment. So if I start with Grange Waters, Councillor Hartstein.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, just to say that I have spoken to the Assistant Director for Education, and she's aware, and officers are on the case to make sure that the business case is watertight, ironically, for Grange Waters, and it will be coming back to the appropriate committee. So just to reassure you that I am on the case and it will be coming back. So thank you.
And later in the agenda, when we get to the capital programme, I think there's a sum of £50,000 in there for Grange Waters to help to help the commercialisation. If I take 1.2 to consider other revenue generating activities, I think Councillor Main is right. I think there is more of this going on than we realise. What I don't want to do though is to kind of get to a stage where we're relying on income generation to service the budget. I think the budget has to be absolutely sustainable and deliverable. So what I'd like to suggest, if Cabinet's in agreement, is that we establish a member working group to work with assistant directors to identify a pipeline of possible commercial activity, possible income generation to report back to Cabinet. But I really would like to keep it separate from the core budget. Any comments on that? Councillor Muldowney?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I do think it is important to look at other ways of raising revenue, but I don't think it should be done as part of the budget setting process, because we need certainty in the budget, and we've achieved the budget savings that we need to. So I'm fully in agreement with Councillor Kent's recommendation that we do it through a working group.
Yeah, I think it's true to say we've identified the budget savings. We haven't achieved anything yet. That comes later. What's next? Councillor Muldowney, the energy management position.
Yes, and just while we're here, I just want to thank Councillor Maney for chairing the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and just to say that I did find it a really valuable exercise. I know it wasn't an easy job, so thank you for doing that. So moving on from the ONS meeting, I have spoken to officers about possible options. We do believe that there are considerable ongoing savings to be made in this area, but we're not wedded to the idea that the idea of employing an energy officer. So it could be, from discussions, it could be provided in different ways. So what we're going to do is continue exploring with officers other ways of making this saving. So the saving still stays in there, but we'll bring something to scrutiny, place scrutiny in the new year.
Okay, so 1.4, feasibility of introducing a 50% reduction in brown bin charges. Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Leader. I think just to flag before I get into the answer for the question, I think when you flagged that it was a recommendation made, it was, just to be clear, a councillor who made this recommendation wasn't a member of the Corporate Scrutiny Committee and wasn't a substitute on the Corporate Scrutiny Committee, nor a member of any scrutiny committee proposing this reduction. And I do admit as well to being a bit baffled by the proposal of the recommendation from the particular councillor, bearing in mind it was that councillor that introduced the scheme that you referenced, and he signed off the sum of money for all residents to pay. So I do have to wonder why he didn't ensure a deduction for elderly residents then, but I'll ask him another time. All of that said, in the spirit of cooperation, the recommendation was accepted, and one of the first things I did as a portfolio holder, which I mentioned on the evening, was to ask officers to produce an options paper for a range of concessions, which I'd be very happy to share with the councillor. The concessions included an option for a monthly or quarterly instalment plan, a concession for those receiving universal credit, a reduction in the charging rate for annual subscription for all of our residents, providing a free garden waste collection service for council-owned sheltered schemes, and for providing a concession for over 60s. All of these items were costed to amount to over £400,000. If I enacted just one concession for one group, I would be potentially discriminating against another group with a protected characteristic. So by only offering one concession for our elderly residents, as I have said many times now in full council at the corporate meeting and here, I would personally like to have this charge removed, not just for our elderly residents, but also for all residents. But the previous administration did leave us in a position where we are financially unable to reverse the decisions that were made by the previous administration. It is just not within my gift to reverse this charge for any resident.
Okay, and Councillor Holloway, 1.5, which is the reduction in highways operational maintenance budget.
Yes, thank you, and appreciate the comments regards my wording around cut, saving, efficiency, which sometimes can be synonyms in council lingo, I think sometimes. When the councillor referred to a cut in the service, it is an efficiency to the service. But when you asked if it was a cut, I took that very literally, meaning is there a cut to the amount of money that they will be receiving? And that answer is yes. I have spoken to the team and they are very, very confident that they are able to maintain the service which we have, which currently repairs 100% of the reported potholes each month, whilst keeping that service for that reduced cost. So in that way, it is an efficiency. But I really do recognise the concerns that are raised, especially with regarding the detail of how they're able to maintain the service with that efficiency, and that is through a range of things with regards to staff and time and other elements. And bearing in mind, I recognise that I've asked the team to provide some further detail on how they can achieve this efficiency and what this practically means. And I suggest that a note is presented to the Place Committee to give them an overview of the detail of that.
Councillor Holloway, thank you. And we're also asked to take into consideration the comments and suggestions on other savings, which I think we have all read, and we were all there on the night to hear it. Does any other portfolio holder have any comments on this? Councillor Maldoni?
Yes, just to say, sort of on the final recommendation 1.6, that we're very happy to take all the comments into consideration. We've been working on these savings proposals now since May, and scrutiny has been a very valuable part of that process. So, as John said, we were all there on the night, and most people contributed to the scrutiny conversation, which was great actually, and we're very grateful for that. And we will take into account all of the comments and points into consideration in the same way as we've approached the 5 substantive recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I put the recommendations, Councillor Maney, would you like to respond to any of that?
Thank you, Leader. I think it'd be helpful to have, as I said at the start, I think the plan is that on all these items, a report will come to corporate ONS dealing with all these recommendations, and we'll have the chance to probe them more then. Just returning to the comments made by Councillor Holloway, which I know was an attempt to clarify this. Again, we'll probe it more, I think, at committee, but I'm pretty sure that when I asked a question at the committee, both the officer response and your own was that yes, it was a cut to service or a reduction in services. It wasn't just you that said that, it was an officer response as well. So are you saying now that it's definitely a saving that's going to be realised through efficiencies rather than cuts? And if it is through efficiencies, are you able to just, again, it's not a question and answer session here, I appreciate that, but just give some clarity around what the efficiencies will be?
Councillor Holloway?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Your recollection might be better than mine, Councillor, as the evening was a bit of a blur, but I think I did answer that, and I think I 100% did say that it was cut. As I said previously, it is 100% through an efficiency, and as I said, I took a very literal, the reduction of an amount to mean cut, and that's how I answered it in that way. It is definitely an efficiency. As I said, it is through things around working patterns, around staff, I'm not able to go in further detail because the team are preparing the much more detail around what that means practically. But as I said, with a lot of efficiencies like this, it is around kind of remanaging the team, remanaging time, and things like that. Apologies, and I hope that the committee will have a further detailed submission in future.
Councillor Maney.
Thank you, Leader. Just briefly, just to again offer some clarity, I think, on the proposal to consider a 50% reduction in the brown bin charge for pensioners. First of all, to be clear, that it was a recommendation of corporate ONS. I know the recommendation was from a non-member, but it was entirely up to corporate ONS whether it took that recommendation forward, and we did. But the clarity is, and I want to be very clear about this, this wasn't something that's just been thrown in at this stage when we were considering the charge last year. At the budget meet, the ONS budget meeting that took place at that time, it was agreed specifically that after 12 months we would look to see whether or not there was the possibility of a reduction. So it isn't something that has just been thought about this year. It received a lot of attention last year, and it's something that I think it was actually Labour members at the time who requested we look at a reduction in 12 months' time. So I think Councillor Jeffries was merely following up on a commitment he gave then to support that at this time. I don't want to get into whether the brown bin charge is a good thing or not, but I fully support the charge. I think it's unfair not to charge for this service. I don't see why people in flats should pay for people who have gardens. And I just would remind Councillor Holloway of what the BVI said, that if a local council if other local councils aren't doing something, then it isn't good practice. And find me many local councils that don't charge for this service. It's not good practice to offer this free of charge. So, as chair of corporate ONS, I would just say I don't not support a charge. It's fair and right that we charge, and as other local authorities are doing. But that request for you to consider a 50% reduction is really us following up on a commitment that was given by the then portfolio holder 12 months ago in response to a request from corporate ONS members at the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to come in? No? Okay. Just before I move to the recommendations, I genuinely believe that rigorous scrutiny is a really good thing, and it helps us to make better decisions. So I too am grateful for Councillor Maney's chairing of that long meeting, and to everybody that took part. And I think it's important that we give proper consideration to those recommendations that have been made. So if I can go through. Recommendation 1.1 is to present a report outlining in further detail the business case for CSO2, Grange Water's business opportunities, to the relevant ONS committee for consideration. Are we all agree that should happen? Thank you. Item 1.2 is to consider other revenue generating activities across services with a view to increasing income for the council. I think we're saying now that we resolved to establish a member working group to look at these opportunities. Is that agreed? 1.3, review PLA02 energy management to give assurance and further justification that the proposal will deliver projected savings. I think what we're now saying is that we will explore other options for delivering this saving whilst keeping the energy management element of it, and pass that to the relevant ONS committee in the new year. Have I got the essence of that? Good. Are we all agreed? Thank you. 1.4, to review the feasibility of introducing a 50% reduction in brown bin charges for pensioners, PLA09. I think what we are agreeing is that we have reviewed the feasibility and it's not something that we are able to do at this time. Are we agreed? Thank you. 1.5, review PLA18, reduction in highways operational maintenance budget to ensure the proposed saving represents an efficiency and not a cut to service. I think what we're agreeing is that we will review and pass a further detailed report to the Place Overview and Scrutiny Committee in the new year for their consideration and clarification. Is that agreed? And 1.6, to take into consideration the comments and suggestions of the ONS committees on other savings proposals as part of its future budget considerations. And I think we have done that. Okay. Rhiannon, have you got everything you need there? You've got some sort of clarity from that. Excellent. Thank you. And Councillor Maney, thank you. Move on to item 17, which is the Revenue and Capital Budget Monitoring Report for Q2 24-25. And I will invite Councillor Muldowney to introduce her report.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for joining us to review this critical update on the Council's financial performance and capital programme for 2024-25. I welcome this report and thank officers. It provides a transparent and robust account of where we stand. As we know, the budget savings targets and capital programme that we are delivering this year were inherited from the previous administration. While we are committed to fulfilling these plans, it is clear that we continue to uncover financial mismanagement of the past, which has left us grappling with unnecessary pressures in the present. So a key example that I do want to talk about, because seems to be some sustained misunderstanding about this element, is the overclaiming of the COVID sales, fees and charges income loss grant in 2020-21. Basically, in 2020, we had a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. The government offered to help. They didn't know how much that local authorities were going to need. Councils made an estimate. The council overestimated by 100%. I understand it wasn't totally uncommon that happened. So basically, we've got to pay it back. It should have been paid back 2 years ago, but it was lost sight of during the previous administration. So no, unfortunately, it's a further budget pressure in this year's budget. So the report highlights a net service overspend of 2.7 million. This is an improvement of 0.438 million since Q1, demonstrating that our ongoing efforts to manage pressures are being effective. The Council's overall position reflects an additional 1.896 million pressure. However, again, we've made progress reducing this pressure by 0.209 million since Q1. But obviously, this additional pressure of 1.202 million is, over half of that overall pressure that we're showing in this year's budget. As well as that, we are facing budget pressures that every local authority is facing up and down the country. In children's services, we're managing significant budget pressures, placement pressures. We've got the Empower Review, which will help us better understand and address costs and demands. And obviously, temporary accommodation remains a critical pressure within the Place Directorate. These pressures, as I said, are not unique to Thurrock, but they're being felt by all local authorities, reflecting a growing nationwide crisis in demand-led services. So there are various actions that are being undertaken, that are being reported back to Finance Recovery Board next year, and they'll help us to control costs both in year and as we prepare next year's budget. The capital programme also highlights legacy challenges. For the general fund, we've got slippage of 30.627 million out of a budget of 58.398 million. That's anticipated. While the HRA capital programme shows slippage of about 10 million on a budget of nearly 50. So these delays probably largely stem from overly optimistic timelines set by the previous administration for projects, such as the Blackshots housing development and Stamford Hope infrastructure, which faces a funding gap of 10 million, which we'll see later on we've had to add into our draft capital programme for next year. Despite these challenges, there's much to be optimistic about. Thanks to the dedication and hard work of our staff, we now have far more accurate monitoring and tracking progress in place. enabling us to make projections with more confidence. Our savings programme has seen some real progress, with fewer savings rated as unachievable and more either delivered or on track compared to Q1. Looking ahead, I want to emphasise that there is still high confidence that we will end the year in budget. This confidence is driven by the continued efforts of our staff to manage pressures, bring forward further savings more quickly, and mitigate overspends. Additionally, there are discussions going on around contingency plans should none of our action plans bear fruit towards the end of the year. But I believe that by staying disciplined, transparent and proactive, and by continuing to rectify the mistakes of the past, I'm confident we can meet these challenges and deliver on bringing the budget in on budget. Thank you.
Councillor Muldowney, thank you. I'll invite questions or comments. No, I would just echo what you said, Councillor Muldowney, about the gratitude we have to staff who have really got a grip of this and are grinding out the savings proposals that were agreed last year. Some of them pretty difficult to deliver, but are delivering them, and where they can't be delivered, finding mitigating savings elsewhere. You said that you have high confidence that we will deliver a balanced budget. I would just go further and say that not delivering a balanced budget is just not an option. We cannot afford to do that, both for the finances of the council and equally as important for the confidence of our commissioners and the confidence of government. We don't have an alternative. We don't have an option. We must bring the budget in online. I'm confident that we will, but it's really not going to be easy, and we've all got to keep going. We've got to keep the work rate up and just make sure we deliver. I'm particularly pleased to see that we are being asked to approve the transfer of, £1.4 million to a delivery reserve and £1.5 million to an adult social care and children's social care demographic risk reserve. You know, I think this is good practice. It's what just about every other authority does, and I'm really grateful that we've managed to find the funding to do that. I think it's a really important step, so thank you for that. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Hooper?
I welcome this report. I think, I thank officers because the pressure they've been under to deliver this has just been horrendous. And I know as councillors and cabinet members, we're having to make difficult decisions that we're not all happy about making, but we are making decisions that has a minimum impact on direct services. But it's clear that we're moving to a far better financial place than we were. So I congratulate the officers, I congratulate you, Councillor Muldowney, on your work, and I look forward to achieving the budget that we've set out to achieve.
Anybody else? Okay. Councillor Muldowney, if you'd like to sum up and move your recommendations.
Thank you. I think I spoke quite a lot at the beginning, so I'll just move the recommendations. For the reasons set out in this report, the Cabinet is recommended to 2.1 to note and comment on the Council's service position and forecast overspend position at Q2 of 2.722 million, representing a reduction of 0.348 million on the position presented at Q1.
Agreed.
Thank you. 2.2 to note and comment on the Council's overall position and forecast overspend position at Q2 of 1.896 million, representing a reduction of 0.209 million on the position presented at Q1.
Agreed.
For Cabinet to approve the transfer of 1.381 million reserves to an MTFS delivery reserve and 1.5 million to an adult social care and children's social care demographic risk reserve, as per section 14 of Appendix 1 and 4.7 below.
Agreed.
2.4 to note and comment on the progress made on delivery against the savings target for 2024-25 and the remaining red unachievable rated savings.
Agreed.
Further, to an in-depth review and reprofiling of the general fund capital projects, to note and comment on the capital programme and the anticipated general fund capital programme slippage of 30.627 million and 10.157 million HRA capital programme slippage projected in the report.
Are we all agreed?
Agreed. And finally, 2.6 for Cabinet to approve the addition of the DEFRA grant funding in the capital programme as per section 16 of Appendix 1 and 4.12 below.
Are we all agreed?
Thank you.
So we move on to item 20, which is the draft capital programme 2025-26 through to
Thank you, Chair. I would like to begin by welcoming this comprehensive report on the draft capital programme for 2025-26 to 2029-30. It reflects the Council's commitment to prudent financial management, particularly in reducing borrowing and the cost of borrowing on our revenue budgets. The programme presented to us today is a result of a thorough review conducted as part of the budget setting process, which culminated in its approval by the full Council on the 28th of February 2024. This careful consideration ensures that our investments are both necessary and sustainable. The additions to the capital programme for 2025-26 align with four key categories. So health and safety, so these are measures which are needed to address safety standards and to mitigate risks. Return on investment proposals, which are directly linked to achieving savings in our budgets. Essential or non-avoidable maintenance and replacement, ensuring that we avoid future costs and protect our assets. And other additions which, where justified, demonstrate clear benefits and have been approved on a case-by-case basis. It's important to note this programme has been endorsed by commissioners, reflecting its strategic alignment and fiscal responsibility. However, approval of the capital programme today does not equate to the immediate release of the funds. Every project will require a business case supported by a clear and robust evidence base to secure the funding. This disciplined approach ensures accountability, value for money and a strong focus on delivering tangible benefits for our residents. I commend this report to Council and look forward to seeing the positive impacts these projects will bring to Thurrock in the coming years, and I invite portfolio holders who may like to talk about some of the projects that we are actually going to undertake.
Councillor Muldowney, thank you. Any questions or comments? No? I think it's worth noting, first of all, that this is very much a slimmed down capital programme. I think it's necessarily so because we have to be cognisant of the capacity that we now have within the organisation and just how little scope we have for borrowing to fund. But I am pleased to see that there is £7 million in there for various road maintenance works, which I think is positive. I'm very pleased to see the Orchard Road footbridge, the spiral bridge in Ockenden, making its way back into the capital programme. That's needed replacing. I see Councillor Jeffrey smiling, he knows it well, has needed replacing for many, many years, so I'm glad to see it's on the agenda. And the £10 million for the Stamford Hope station, which gives some hope that we will at last make some progress in giving the people of Stamford a railway station which is no less than they, not even they deserve, but is a basic requirement for them. If there are no further questions or comments, I will ask Councillor Muldowney to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Recommendations. For reasons set out in this report, the Cabinet is recommended to... Oh, it's letters, sorry. A, note the proposed new capital projects in line with the 2025-26 stipulations and criteria as set out in Table 3, Appendix B.
We all agreed? Thank you.
Approve in principle the proposed financing of the additions to the capital programme as set out in Table 4, Appendix C.
We all agreed?
Agreed.
Note the draft capital programme of 305.701 million over the 5-year period from 2025-26 to 2029-30 as set out in Table 4, Appendix C.
Again, are we all agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we will move on to item 19, which is the draft housing revenue account rent setting budget for 2025-26. And I will invite Councillor Muldowney to introduce her report.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to welcome this important report on the housing revenue account, rent setting and budget for 2025-6, along with the updated 30-year business plan. I fully support the recommendations laid out as they balance the Council's financial sustainability with our commitment to affordability for residents. I want to emphasise that housing revenue account rents, including formula rents and affordable rents, remain affordable for residents. I know that this is a concern that has been shared within Cabinet, that the local housing allowance, we may be getting to a point where it's going to make it unaffordable for people in terms of the local housing allowance. The Council's rent setting framework ensures that affordable rents are capped at current LHA rates with rigorous checks in place to ensure compliance. This means residents are not exposed to rents exceeding the support provided by their benefits, helping to maintain affordability. I just want to say a little bit as well about the what the Council offers in terms of residents who are facing financial challenges. The Council has robust measures in place to monitor and assist those who need extra help paying their rent. These include benefit maximisation programmes, discretionary housing payments, financial inclusion support and empathy-driven debt recovery. So we have pre-eviction panels which ensure that no resident faces enforcement action without having explored every possible support option. So I hope that gives my fellow Cabinet colleagues some reassurance on that point. The Council also regularly monitors the impact of rent changes on residents through detailed equality impact assessments and tenants' feedback, ensuring that any emerging issues are addressed swiftly. I urge all members to support these recommendations, which will underlie our repairs programmes and our other programmes of improvement on our stock. And I will finish there. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councillor Hooper?
No one wants to put people's rents up, but what I would say is that our council rents are significantly lower than the market rents. And I often get in surgeries people saying, I've got a housing problem, I want a council house, I don't want a private rent. So I think we still offer value for money. However, with reluctance, I agree with this because we have to fund the housing repairs that are desperately needed to our housing stock. We often hear about people having mould issues. I think we treat the mould issues, but we don't necessarily always solve the core issue. I think we need this type of an increase which will help with that. It won't completely solve it because there's just too much to do at the current time. But I will support the rent increase, but with a little bit of reluctance, but I will support it. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? No? Councillor Muldowney, if you'd like to move the recommendations.
Thank you. I just want to say that I agree with Councillor Hooper. I think all of us are probably of a like mind that we don't want to put rents up, but we have to do that if we're going to deliver on the programmes that we need to keep our stock in good order. So recommendations. For the reasons set out in the report, the Cabinet is recommended to 2.1, agree the approach to setting tenant and leasehold service charges, garage and supported housing charges. Approve the increase in rents, this being the maximum increase possible according to government policy.
Agreed.
Approve the rent flexibility approach of formula rent plus 5% for new tenancies in properties governed by formula rent and 10% for new tenancies in supported housing. Agreed. Approve the increase in service charges and all other charges in HRA fees and charges as detailed in the report and in Appendix 2. Agreed. 2.5. Approve the setting of an indicative balanced HRA budget as per paragraph 4.33.
Agreed.
2.6. Approve the 30-year HRA business plan as per paragraph 4.34 to 4.37. Agreed. 2.7. Note the ongoing HRA capital programme composed of two main strands, transforming homes and the demolitions, rebuilds and acquisitions programme, of which the next 5 years are presented at 75.6 million and 104.3 million respectively. Approval of these is sought via a separate Cabinet report which will be presented in February 2025 as part of the Council's overall capital programme.
Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Before we move on, the next two items, items 20 and 21, are the Treasury Management Review and the draft review of the budget for 25-26 and the medium-term financial strategy reports. These reports were listed on the agenda as being to follow. The reports have now been circulated and published. However, the Council's constitution in Chapter 8 provides that no decision shall be taken at a meeting unless it's included on the agenda for that meeting and is accompanied by a report. All agendas and reports must be published at least 5 working days before the meeting. The two reports, items 20 and 21, do not comply with the dates for publication requirements, but have now been made available and published. I've been informed by officers that the reason for the delay of these reports are that there have been a number of plans to work through in determining next year's budget that have been subject to significant change, and there have been significant challenges in finalising the reports. These reports predominantly present draft proposals which will be returned to Cabinet and then full Council in February following consultation. They need to be considered this evening in order that that consultation can take place in advance of the budget setting process in February. I therefore consider that there are special circumstances that require the items to be considered as a matter of urgency, which I can do as Chair pursuant to paragraph 5.5 of Chapter 8 of the Constitution. Further recommendations in the report, which relate to specific decisions, will not be pursued this evening and will slip to January and February Cabinets respectively, save for the approval of the draft budget so that that can be consulted on. The recommendations will be addressed as each report is considered. With that, I will invite Councillor Muldowney to introduce item 20, which is the annual Treasury Management Review for 23-24 and the half-yearly update for 24-25.
Thank you, Chair. This report highlights significant progress in addressing the Council's historic financial challenges, including the reduction of our external debt from 1.5 billion to just under £1 billion by September 2024. These achievements reflect the impact of our divestment strategy and diligent application of capital receipts. However, the report also acknowledges a legacy error in setting the authorised limit for external debt. So, on the 31st of March 2024, our external debt was estimated to be 1.2 billion. So it's difficult to see how setting an authorisation limit of 850 million at that time was going to work for 2024-25. Therefore, we need to reset the authorised limit, and I will take the advice of Councillor Kent about whether this recommendation is one that we will be able to move tonight. But we do have to reset the authorised limit to an appropriate level. So the authorised limit is not saying that we're going to achieve that level of debt. It was the breach was a technical oversight rather than a systemic failure, but it underscores the importance of accurate forecasting and robust financial controls. So in response recommendation 2.1.3, which I'm not sure if this is the one that we can't agree tonight, I'll take advice from Councillor Kent, proposed a revised authorisation limit of 1.4 billion and an operational boundary of 1 billion, aligning with our current debt position and prudential indicators. This adjustment ensures compliance with regulations while maintaining fiscal stability.
Okay. I'll ask Helen Nichol just to confirm, but my understanding is that the recommendation we can't take here is 2.1.1 because we're being asked there to approve something. At 2.13, we're only being asked to note something. Is that right, Helen?
Yes, that's correct, Chair. Just noting, though, that the second part of 2.1.3 does go on to approve the revised authorised limit and operational boundary. But I understand that this is coming back in the Treasury Management Strategy in any event in February for consideration by Cabinet and then full Council as part of the budget setting process. So I'm content for this recommendation to proceed this evening.
Thank you. Sarah, thank you. I'm open to questions and comments. No? Okay, Sarah, you got off lightly. If you'd like to move recommendations, but not 2.1.1.
I'm amazed that nobody wants to ask me about Treasury management. Okay. The Cabinet is recommended to 2.1.2. Note the annual Treasury Management Report for 2023-24 and mid-year Treasury Management Report 2024-25.
Are we agreed?
Agreed. And 2.1.3, Cabinet note the breach in the authorised limit and recommend that Council approve the revised authorised limit and operational boundary for 2024-25.
Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Can I just say at the end of that one, the Treasury management is actually incredibly important. But it is highly technical. I think we've all had briefings on this. We've all been taken through it, and we've all given it a great deal of consideration. So we've got here this evening, and I'm grateful to Sarah and to various officers that have taken us through it in great detail to make sure that we have a good understanding. I'm going to move on to item 21, which is the draft revenue budget for 25-26 and the draft medium-term financial strategy for 25-26 to 28-29. Councillor Muldowney.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm pleased to present the revised draft medium-term financial strategy for 2025-26 and the draft revenue budget for 2025-26. I think what I would emphasise is these are draft budgets, so there's still work going on them. Obviously, we've had indications from the new government that they're in the budget that there could be more sources of income coming to us which will change these numbers. At the moment, we haven't put anything in because we're not sure of the allocations that we're going to be getting, so we've erred on the side of caution and kept it to what we actually know at the moment. But obviously by the time this comes back in its final form in February, we will know those allocations, so they will be included in that final budget. When I was looking through this budget, I reread the BVI report just to give us a sense and remember what it was like at that time. So when commissioners arrived, they were faced with a council in financial disaster. Years of reckless borrowing and poor decision making had left us with a staggering 1.3 billion in debt. The Best Value Inspection report revealed a council that was poorly managed, lacked proper oversight and had no effective way to handle risk. The leadership at that time was described as being in a state of unconscious incompetence, making damaging decisions without realising how much harm they were causing. One of the paragraphs there describes how at one point the council was actually a week away from being unable to pay its staff. So I just wanted everybody to reflect on that for a moment before we go forward and look at this draft budget. Obviously, the revised MTFS we're presenting today is a key part of us being on this financial recovery journey. Unlike the rushed budgets of the past, this plan is actually built on a clear understanding of the challenges we face, including rising costs and growing demand for vital services like adult social care, housing and children's services. This MTFS doesn't just deal with the problems of today, it looks ahead and provides a solid framework for managing future growth and transforming how we deliver services. So, as I said, we're still waiting for final confirmation on some government funding, but there are positive signs that Thurrock's position as one of the most deprived areas in the country will be properly recognised, and we expect to receive additional support through that new funding formula. There are also new grants on the horizon for children's social care and other one-off funds like the extended producer responsibility income. So we are approaching that very cautiously because these things will probably come with some extra responsibilities, but it's looking hopeful that they will give us some breathing room, and we know they may come with restrictions, so we're staying cautious on that. This MTFS reflects the hard work of this administration and the new leadership team in turning things around, but most of all the hard work of the officers, and I want to thank the commissioners as well for their oversight as we've moved through this journey. It's a detailed, realistic plan that sets us on a path to financial stability while maintaining essential services for our residents. There's still a lot more work to be done on it, and we're going to continue to refine this further before presenting the final budget in February. But this document, I think, shows how far we've come from that day when we were a week away from not being able to pay our staff, and the progress that we've made. Chair, the challenges we inherited were enormous and the road ahead won't be easy, but this MTFS shows that we're facing those challenges head on, and with your support we can continue to rebuild Thurrock and deliver a better future for our communities. Thank you.
Councillor Matoney, thank you. And I think it is it's reasonable just to take a step back and to acknowledge how far we've come when it comes to understanding, first of all, the scale of the financial disaster and working out how we start to put it right. And you're right to remind us that, when was it, July 2022, we were within a week of not being able to pay the staff. And I think we too quickly forget the chaos and confusion of the back end of 2022 and the beginning of 2023. And I think that one of the things that has gone almost unnoticed is, as we've started to stabilise things, to get an air of certainty around the place and to start to build staffing structures that are permanent and will last. So, you know, I just muse that, for instance, Dawn Calvert is sitting there as our Section 151 officer, our head of finance, the fifth person to be carrying out that role since 2022. You know, that is crazy for an upper tier authority. You can't have any certainty, you can't have any rigidity, you can't set budgets with any confidence that you're actually doing the right thing if you don't think the people that are working for you are going to be here in 6 months to take responsibility for those actions, to learn from those actions and to prepare for next year. I think sometimes we forget that we've taken some really tough decisions in prioritising getting some of those financial services, for instance, up and running when we've had people from the outside saying that we should be concentrating on other things. I think we do need to reflect on that. I also reflect that the medium-term financial strategy that we're working to at the moment, that was agreed in February, was put together in an incredibly pressurised set of circumstances. And it's almost inevitable that there will be things in there that are just wrong. So we know that the inflation assumptions in there were wrong, the pay assumptions weren't right. There was no growth in there for temporary accommodation for homelessness. There was no growth in there for children's services. And that isn't a criticism of the people that were putting it together at that time, because it was an incredibly difficult and chaotic time. Not helped, I've got to say, by the then administration at the last knocking saying, by the way, we're not going to put council tax up by the government recommendation, and people having to scuttle around and find another couple of £1 million worth of savings. But I am utterly confident that the medium-term financial strategy that is now being worked through, I'm confident of two things. One, it will not look like this in 4 weeks' time. It will be different because there are an awful lot of moving parts. But what we will get at the end of this will be robust and deliverable. Any further questions or comments? No? Okay, Sarah, I will invite you to move the recommendations with the exception of recommendation G. G for George.
Thank you, Chair. Cabinet is requested to A, note that the expenditure controls put in place at the time of the Section 114 notice continue to be robustly adhered to after the expiration of the notice on the 31st of March 2024.
We agree?
Agreed. B, approve the draft budget. Are we allowed to do that? Yes. Yep. For 2025-26 and the draft medium-term financial strategy 2025-26 to 2028-29, noting this is subject to further set out in appendices 1 and 2, so that Cabinet may later consider the budget considering the consultation responses and the equality impact assessments before it's referred to Council in February.
We're able to take this one because without it we can't go out to the necessary consultation. So we're doing this as under emergency procedures. So are we agreed?
Agreed. Thank you for that clarification. C, note the autumn budget 2024 confirmed broad plans for public spending for 2025-26, which will impact on local government, and that the draft budget will be updated when the detail is announced in the indicative financial settlement, which is expected week commencing the 16th of December, followed by the final settlement no later than January 2025, paragraphs 6.1 to 6.3.
We agreed?
Agreed.
Note that at draft stage, the required savings targets for 2025-26 of 18.2 million have been identified, I think that should say, rather than achieved. Has,
are we agreed?
Agreed.
note the proposal to increase core council tax by 2.99% and to increase adult social care precept council tax by 2% in 2025-26. Table 3.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Note that at draft stage, the MTFS assumes implementing the council tax second homes premium, paragraph 9.5.
We agreed?
Agreed.
Not G, but H, refer this report to the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 14th of January 2025 for consideration.
Are we all agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. That brings the meeting to a close. Can I thank everybody for their attendance and wish everybody a safe journey home.